Apologies, there we go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Spence, the IPC Chief Brand and Communications Officer. Welcome to this press conference regarding the outcomes of the IPC Governing Board meeting from earlier today. Joining me on the top table this evening, to my left is the IPC President, Andrew Parsons. Next to him is Jitske Visser, the Chairperson of the IPC Athletes Council. And to the far left is Duane Kale, the Vice President of the International Paralympic Committee. The format for this evening's press conference, you'll have obviously seen the decision that was communicated at 19:15 local time this evening, is Andrew will say some words about how the board reached that decision. We will then pass the floor to Jitske to say some words on behalf of the athlete community, and then we will open the floor for questions. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Craig. Dear all, thank you for joining us here so late this evening, and to those of you joining this press conference online. I would much prefer to be talking to you this evening about Paralympic athletes, the outstanding sport you are about to witness, and how fantastic the preparations are going here for Beijing 2022 Paralympic Winter Games. However, with just 48 hours to go before the opening ceremony of the Beijing 2022 Paralympic Winter Games, this is a very difficult time for the whole world as well as the Paralympic movement. This week, the IPC has needed to navigate its way through two very difficult issues: the safe passage of the Ukrainian Paralympic team to Beijing and the breach of the Olympic truce by the Russian and Belarus governments. It goes without saying that the ongoing situation in Ukraine is horrific, and our thoughts, prayers, and well wishes are with our member, the NPC of Ukraine, its delegates, athletes, officials, and the wider Ukrainian population. I am delighted to say that just hours ago, the Ukrainian team, consisting of 20 athletes and 9 guides, arrived safely here in Beijing. This is a wonderful achievement, and I'm sure you share my delight that they are safe and will be able to compete at these games. For this, I would like to thank the IPC management team and the Beijing 2022 Organizing Committee for their tireless work behind the scenes. Today, the IPC Governing Board met to discuss the current situation and its impact on the Paralympic Games and the wider Paralympic movement. As you can imagine, it was a very intense and emotional meeting with all board members eager to share their views on the matter at hand. Over the last week, the board and myself have also had many conversations with IPC members, and we are all grateful to you for sharing your views and your opinions on this subject. The points raised, both publicly and privately, by our member organizations fed into the internal discussions we had over the course of the last several days. The 14-strong board, which features 8 Paralympians, was united in its condemnation of both Russian and Belarus governments for breaching the UN resolution in the week leading up to the opening of the Games. The board was also unanimous in deciding that such actions could not go unnoticed or unaddressed. In deciding what action to take, the board was guided by the IPC's core principles, which include a commitment to political neutrality and impartiality, and an unwavering belief in the transformative power of sport. These are key components of the new IPC constitution that was approved at the 2021 IPC General Assembly held just over 3 months ago. The board also needed to work within the framework of the IPC handbook, the rules and regulations that govern the Paralympic movement and which are approved by the IPC membership. In that respect, it is currently not a membership obligation for an IPC member to ensure compliance with the Olympic truce. We were also conscious that decisions of this magnitude invariably end up in law courts. Therefore, our decision-making needed to be driven not by emotions, but by our constitutional purpose and handbook. This approach is consistent with how we tackled the Russian doping crisis ahead of the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. Back then, we were able to prove that the RPC was unable to ensure compliance with and the enforcement of the IPC's anti-doping code and the World Anti-Doping Code. These obligations are a fundamental requirement for all national Paralympic committees and clearly highlighted in the IPC handbook. This time round, the situation is different. There is no nexus between the recent actions of the Russian and Belarusian governments and our membership obligations. In particular, there currently is no membership obligation for an IPC member to ensure compliance with the Olympic truce. This means that within the current IPC rules framework, suspending either NPC Russia or NPC Belarus for breaching the Olympic truce is something that would be overturned in a German court of law. Working within the parameters of the IPC Constitution and the IPC Handbook, the IPC Governing Board has taken the stronger possible action in response to the gross violation of the Olympic truce by the governments of Russia and Belarus. The actions we have taken were announced earlier this evening. Ahead of them becoming public, we informed Beijing 2022, the IOC, and briefed all IPC members participating in the Beijing 2022 Paralympic Winter Games. The measures are as follows. The RPC and NPC Belarus will participate as neutrals at the Beijing 2022 Paralympic Winter Games under the following conditions. All their athletes support personnel will participate in an individual capacity as neutral athletes support personnel. They will compete under the Paralympic flag and the Paralympic anthem. They will not be included in the medals table. The RPC delegation must cover the RPC symbol on their uniforms in all official ceremonies and sporting competitions. The Belarus delegation must cover the Belarus flag on their uniforms in all official ceremonies and sporting competitions. All technical officials attending the games from Russia and Belarus will be listed as neutrals under the Paralympic flag, as will coaches from the respective countries involved with other teams. The approach set out on points 1 and 2 above will also be followed in relation to the participation of the RPC and NPC Belarus in the 10 parasports governed by the IPC. The IPC Governing Board has also decided, both in its role as the global guardian of Paralympic movement and as international federations for 10 parasports, that it will not hold any events in Russia or Belarus until further notice. This will include World and European Championships, as well as all sanctional level competitions, such as World Series, World Cups, and Grand Prix events. The IPC Governing Board also recommends that all parasport international federations, regional organizations, and the IOSDs follow the same approach. An extraordinary IPC General Assembly will be held in 2022. Under the IPC Constitution, 6 months' notice must be given before this event can take place. At this meeting, IPC members will be invited to vote upon whether ensuring compliance with the Olympic truce should be a membership requirement, and therefore, any IPC member breaching that requirement in the future could face suspension or termination under the IPC rules, and whether to suspend or terminate the membership of the Russian Paralympic Committee and Belarus Paralympic Committee. The Paralympic honor bestowed to Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, has been withdrawn. Paralympic orders, the highest accolade that can be presented within the Paralympic movement, will be withdrawn from the following individuals. Dmitry Chernychenko, President of Sochi 2014 Organizing Committee, now Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian Federation. Dmitry Kozak, Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, now Deputy Chief of Staff of the Presidential Executive Office. Oleg Molotov, Chief of Interagency Security Command Center, Sochi 2014, now Deputy Foreign Minister. Alexander Gorovoy, Deputy Chief of Interagency Security Command Center, Sochi 2014, now First Deputy Interior Minister. Given the time constraints and the need for the IPC to focus on the delivery of a safe and successful Paralympic Winter Games under these unprecedented circumstances, the IPC Governing Board will reconvene after the Games to further discuss this matter and any additional action that may be required. It is deeply disappointing that such action is required. However, the IPC Governing Board believes it to be necessary in order to hold governments to account for actions that impact directly on the Paralympic movement, the Paralympic Games, and Paralympic athletes. This is especially so given the origins of the Paralympic movement arising out of the horrific events of Second World War. Now that this decision has been made, I expect all participating NPCs to treat the neutral athletes as they would any other athletes at these games, no matter how difficult this may be. Unlike their respective governments, these Paralympic athletes and officials are not aggressors. They are here to compete in a sport event like everybody else. The eye of the world will be watching the Paralympic Winter Games in the coming days. It is vital we show the world leaders through our sport that we can unite as human beings and that our true power is found when we promote peace, understanding, and inclusion. This is at the core of what the Paralympic movement does and what it stands for. We should not lose sight of this now, no matter what the circumstances. In some of my conversations during the past several days, I've heard the sentiment that sometimes you just have to do the right thing no matter what the consequence. I suspect some of you in this room may be thinking the same. I want to take a moment to address this view because I think it is misplaced in these circumstances and actually can result in real damage to our movement. The question I will ask is the right thing for whom? The second thing I'd offer is that being faithful to our Constitution and membership obligations is in fact doing the right thing. We are membership, and our constitutional purpose, our collective belief in the power of sport, it's not something that we put on and take off whenever it suits us. Instead, the principle of political neutrality and the genuine belief in the transformative power of sport must be our North Star, our strength, or perhaps our lifeboat, especially when we find ourselves facing the darkest side of humanity. These commitments are ones to embrace, not shed, during these critical times. To close, I hope I have been able to share with you the difficulty of today's decision. At the IPC, we pride ourselves on sticking to our principles when making difficult decisions. Today, we could not abandon the principles that have got us this far, no matter what the public pressure. As a membership-based organization, we value the views and the ongoing support of our members. This is why we are eager to organize the extraordinary General Assembly later this year, rather than wait until 2023 General Assembly, so that the members can have more of a say on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd now like to pass the mic to Jitske Visser, the chairperson of the IPC Athletes Council. Jitske, over to you.
Thank you, Craig. Good evening, everyone. As the chairperson of the IPC Athletes Council, it's disappointing for the athletes and all game stakeholders that with 48 hours to go before the opening ceremony, the talk is not of sport, but global politics. We've also been greatly concerned to ensure that the Ukrainian Paralympic delegation could safely get to the Games, and it is wonderful that they arrived earlier this day. Since this crisis began, the IPC Athletes Council has been eager to listen to the views of the global para-athlete community, in particular the 647 athletes who are competing here in Beijing. Interestingly, the views are strongest amongst those athletes who are not here in Beijing, those from sports not here to compete within the next days. For those athletes competing here in Beijing, the views are very mixed. Regardless, I think it is really important for all athletes to be free to voice their opinion on this matter. It's important and crucial that their voice is heard. For the athletes here at the Beijing 2022 Paralympic Winter Games, it's important that athletes voice their views within the rules that they have helped shape following an 18-month-long consultation. This means the freedom to share their opinions with the media and the public via social media. In my role as chairperson of the IPC Athletes Council, it is my responsibility to summarize all the views of the athlete community on this situation and present them to the IPC governing board. The IPC aims to be an athlete-centered organization, and at a board level, 8 of the 14 members are Paralympians, who between them have 23 Paralympic Games dating from 1984 through Tokyo 2020. One consistent view from the athlete community is that every athlete should be treated fairly. I truly believe the IPC governing board's decision today achieves this. In the meeting, it was a very in-depth and lengthy discussion, and I think the decision made is the right one. Being a part of the Paralympic movement and the Paralympic Games means being a part of something bigger than each of us. These games and parasport itself show the world the transformative nature of sport to unite people and promote peace. We have athletes here in our care who have trained for many, many years to reach the very pinnacle of their respective sports, which are these Paralympic Winter Games. This is something many have dedicated their lives to. As a four-time Paralympian myself, representing my country on the biggest stage of all is the greatest of honors. I treasure every Paralympic Games I am part of, and therefore I'm always fully committed to make the most of the opportunity. For some athletes to come here and decide not to compete is something I really believe they will regret for the rest of their lives. This may be their only opportunity to compete at the biggest stage. And if you don't compete, then you'll make it easier for other athletes to win. Not competing against an opponent goes against these principles and against the values of fair play and sportsmanship that have served the Paralympic movement so well since its inception in 1948. The Paralympic movement prides itself on celebrating diversity, embracing differences, and discouraging discrimination. To finish, I hope now that the decision has been made, the focus can switch back to sport. Our hosts and many athletes have been preparing for this event for several years now. Let's show the world what we can do being united. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitske. We will now open the floor to questions. So if you have your question, please raise your hand. And I think is the format that you go to the microphone in the middle of the channel here. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and I will invite you to go to the microphone. I'll take the gentleman here.
So my name is Lee Rini. I am a journalist with the Kyiv Post in Ukraine. I also have been writing for the IPC since 2017. Mr. Parsons, I was very much looking forward to meeting you. This is not easy for anyone in Ukraine right now. This wasn't what I was supposed to be doing here. I'm a journalist, an English language journalist in the country. No other journalists were allowed to travel out of the country. They're not allowed, even if they wanted to. My first question, and please forgive me, I do have a couple because there's no other Ukrainians here to ask these questions. My first question is, I want to know what you would say to Yevhen Malashev's parents. Yevhen was a biathlete on Ukraine's national junior team. He was killed yesterday. He was killed yesterday in a bombing in Kharkiv. You talked earlier about giving athletes the chance to compete. He will never get a chance to compete again. So on behalf of his family, I want to know what you would say to them about allowing athletes from the aggressor states to compete when he will never get that chance.
Well, the only thing I can say to his family is that, of course, we regret what is going on in Ukraine. I cannot even start to imagine the pain that his family is feeling at the moment. Again, my country is not at war. My family is not protecting themselves from bombings in the subways of Kyiv, as I know that many people are doing at the moment. So I cannot even start to imagine the pain that they are feeling right now. So I can only tell them that my deepest thoughts are with them, my prayers. And unfortunately, they will not see their son competing here in Beijing. And this is absolutely not fair. It's disgusting. It's against humanity. But again, the decision that we took was based in our constitution. We do not believe that by not following the rules and regulations of the International Paralympic Committee, which the laws that makes us viable and possible as an organization and as a movement that took us this far will ever change what happened with their son. Unfortunately, Russian athletes competing here as neutrals, not competing here as neutrals, will not change what happened. And this is a crime against humanity, what we're seeing here. So I can only sympathize with them, try to. I cannot even imagine how they should be feeling at the moment, and for not seeing him competing at the highest possible level here. No one is happy. No one here thinks that what is happening in Ukraine is normal or even acceptable. But again, we do have to follow the rules of our own organization under the risk of having our decisions overturned. We don't have the authority to ban the Russian and Belarus athletes, but the General Assembly has. That's why we are calling an extraordinary General Assembly to do that.
So I apologize, but this seems to be a rehash of what happened 8 years ago when Russia was the host of the Paralympic Games and first invaded Ukraine. This isn't a new war. This has been going on for 8 years. You're talking about introducing legislation or bylaws to deal with breaking the Olympic truce. Can you explain why this wasn't done when they did this in the first place 8 years ago?
No, I don't think I have an explanation for that fact, why in 2014 it was not introduced any legislation to say that the Olympic truce was not, when it's broken, it was a breach of the membership obligations of any country. I cannot explain you why that was not the case. And I know it's not only the second time, it's the third time that Russia breaches the Olympic truce.
But this is the same war.
Sorry?
This is the same war as 2014.
It's the same war as this war is not something new. It has escalated to a completely new level, but it's going on for 8 years. I agree with you.
The last question I have here, I'm just wondering how vigorously will the IPC enforce its ban on protesting? For example, will federations be penalized for their athletes refusing to compete against athletes from the aggressor states?
The first thing, can you repeat the last part of your question? Sorry.
Will federations be penalized for their athletes refusing to compete against athletes from the aggressor states?
The only difference I would like to make in the last part of your question, and I do understand that Russia is aggressor state, but the athletes here that were born in that nation, they are not the aggressors. And I think it's important to make that distinction.
Athletes from the aggressor states.
I agree with you, they are from the aggressor state. But the athletes here, they are not soldiers, they are not the aggressors. And I think we need to treat them with the same respect we treat athletes from any other nation who earn the qualifications law to be here. Specifically on your question, we will act when and as it happens. You know, I think hypothetical situations are difficult to articulate on that, but we will deal with that when and as they happen. And what is your name? Can you?
Lee Reaney. Lee Reaney.
Look, again, I cannot even imagine how painful it is to be Ukrainian now. I try to sympathize, I try to empathize. It's difficult. My country is not at war. Again, my family is not hiding themselves in the subways of the capital of my nation. We do recognize the seriousness and the magnitude of the situation. We just try to separate politics from sport. We do not believe that the response to the Russian government will be to ban their athletes, not respecting our own constitution. If they break the rules of the international laws, we will not break our own laws. We cannot do that. But we do understand how painful, we try to understand how painful it is to be Ukrainian these days. That's why we made a huge effort together with the Ukrainian Paralympic Committee to bring the athletes here, because the president of the Ukrainian Paralympic Committee, he said to me two things. Of course, he said, look, we would like to see the athletes from Belarus and Russia out. And I said, look, I respect that, Valerie. And he said, but our athletes want to compete. And then we made a huge effort to bring them here. Together with them, together with Ukraine, all the credit to Ukrainian Paralympic Committee, to the IPC, specifically the Ukrainian Paralympic Committee. I hope they are able to share with you, share with the world their journey to get here. It's a fantastic piece of human resistance and resilience, things that only can happen most probably at the Paralympic Games. What these athletes are doing to compete here, it's outstanding. They are heroes just to be here. But again, we cannot, because of that, recognizing all the effort, recognizing what is going on, to not follow our own rules. Otherwise, where do we draw the line in the future? And I do understand your feelings, I do respect them. I see you're wearing with pride the national colors of Ukraine. You should do that. And this is what we would like to see, the Ukrainian athletes here competing, winning, losing, as it happens with every sportsman in the world, but honoring the colors of their country, which is something, as you said, athletes who were born in the aggressor state, they will not have that opportunity. And this is something that I think they will regret, but it's up to their government to explain to them why they will not do that. But I do respect your pain and your emotions right now.
Thank you, Lee. Do we have any further questions? Wakako, just here.
Thank you. Wakako Yuki from Yomiuri Shimbun, President. First question is a small follow-up. I think you just mentioned talking to Valerie, Mr. Shishkovich. Was it after you made the decision, you have already communicated to Ukrainian delegate? No.
We have communicated to all the national Paralympic committees in writing. I haven't spoke with Valerie since we took the decision. I spoke with him a few days ago. I was not even in China when we spoke, because they started this journey to be here, and Valerie is with his athletes. So no, I haven't spoken with him. We will speak tomorrow.
I see. Of course, with all the respect to what you have gone through today, the heavy decision, but it seems to me that the IPC is asking Ukrainian athlete to peacefully compete in the competition while knowing that their families and cities could be in imminent danger from governmental aggressors. Do you believe that it's humanely possible for your Paralympians?
I think these athletes, they have fought the battle of their lives to be here, not only in the last few years to qualify, but just their journey to be here. I do not believe the Ukrainian athletes, they are coming here to be aggressive with athletes from Russia or Belarus. I think they are coming here to compete and to make Ukrainians proud in this very difficult moment in the history of the nation. So I think, and I'm absolutely sure that if they did all of that to be here, is to compete and make their country proud, and not to fight against athletes, and not be aggressive, and not be, if they can be aggressive while competing, and put all the strength, all the anger in having the best possible performance and taking all this frustration, yes, that's what I think they should do. But they should not waste the opportunity, something that they have fought so hard to do exactly what the aggressor wants them to do, which is to have, lose their mind and do something that they regret for the rest of their lives. Jitske has mentioned here, the pinnacle, the moment of their lives, is here at the Paralympic Winter Games. So I do believe that they will focus on that. I hope they will do that, understanding again their pain, their frustration, and that when they see athletes from Belarus and Russia, of course, we understand that the feeling will be negative. But we hope, as top athletes that they are, that they can focus on the competition.
Kako, just to add on to that, I think in the Paralympic movement, we always talk about human resilience. And I think the Ukrainian delegation being here is the greatest example of human resilience we've ever seen in the Paralympic movement. We always talk about, as well as challenges as being opportunities. And we have the world's eyes on us right now. They may not be agreeing with the decision, but if we can show unity in people and use this platform to promote the fact that we can bring athletes from 48 different nations to come here and compete together in peaceful circumstances and show that when you set rules, you abide by them, I think that sends out a very strong message to the world leaders. And we need to do that. What we can't do, just because others are, is run away from our moral obligations and the rules of what we've set. I mean, if we start breaking our own rules, then what hope is there for competition in sport? We just tear up the rule book. We've got to stick to the core principles that have got the Paralympic movement to where we are today. And one of those is fighting discrimination and promoting inclusion. That's what we need to do here. And by bringing the nations together, we've got to send out a really strong message of peace, because that's what the world needs right now. It needs peace. Question from the back there.
My name is Jean Saint-Onge from Radio-Canada. I've been covering the Games since 2008 here in Beijing. My question is for the athletes representative. You said that you have the responsibility to represent all the opinions, that these opinions were very mixed. Did you talk to the Ukrainian athletes, and how did they react when they learned that they would face athletes from Russia and Belarus?
Thank you for your question. I was able to talk to the Ukrainian athletes before this decision was made, so we did not know what was going to happen. So I did take their opinion into consideration, and I also brought it to the board, and the decision only has been made this afternoon. So after that, I have not been able to speak with them yet, and I am hoping to be speaking to them tomorrow.
I think, just to add on to that, is...
Do you think it will be well received?
Well, to be honest, I do not know that, how they are going to react. I would love to get back to you tomorrow when I have their answer.
Look, I think we all appreciate difficult decisions and never universally accepted. We totally knew that when the board was making the decision today. But as Jitske said, one of the themes that was coming out from all the conversations of the athlete community was to treat athletes fairly. And that's what we've tried to do today. There's been a lot of talk in sport in many years, and for the last few years, about athlete welfare. We have 2 delegations here who have trained for 4 years to be at this moment. Where if we were to send them home now, just because of their leaders, through no choice of the athletes, that I think is not right. What we've done is the harshest possible punishment we can do within the framework of our rules. If we'd have banned Russia today, all that would have happened is tomorrow they'd have gone to the courts, and then we'd have seen the RPC competing as the RPC in the medals table, and we would have seen the Belarus National Paralympic Committee competing as they were. This decision ensures neutral Paralympic athletes. Those athletes can compete as an individual. And that's what we've tried to do today, is listen to the athletes. We said, treat people fairly. That's what we're asking for in the Paralympic movement. We want people to be treated fairly in society. It's what we fight for every single day. That's our cause, that's our purpose. But as I say, the difficult decisions are never going to be universally accepted. And we just have to face that, unfortunately, today. Any further questions? Question from this gentleman here.
My name is Masaki Karaya from Kyodo News. Ask questions in Japanese. 今日の理事会の中で今回の結論に至ったのは全会一致だったのでしょうか、それとも違う意見は出たのでしょうか。
No, it was not unanimous.
他の意見はどのような意見が出たのでしょうか。ロシアやベラルーシの選手たちを大会から排除するべきだという意見も出たのでしょうか。
We had different opinions that went from not taking any action to banning Russian athletes, but the vast majority of our board have decided what we are announcing here at in this occasion.
具体的には何対何でしたか。
No, that is not something that we do. A decision made by the IPC governing board is a decision that it's defended by the whole group. We do not disclose if it's 3 votes, 10 votes. What I can say is that it was not unanimous because you asked. But we don't disclose the number of votes, and we don't say who voted for what. It's a group decision.
理事会の中でそのロシアとベラルーシを排除すべきだという意見があったということは間違いないということでよろしいですね。
Yes, some members have expressed their view, but at the end of the discussions, the vast majority voted for the measure that we are communicating this evening.
ありがとうございます。すみません、最後に一つ実務的な質問をさせてください。メダルテーブルには、カウントしないということになってますけれども、これは、例えばロシアやベラルーシの選手が1位、2位、3位になった場合はメダルは授与されるけれども、それを NPC が獲得したメダルとしてはカウントされないという、そういう認識でよろしいですか。
Yes, if they win medals, they will get the medals. If they get the gold medal, there will be a ceremony with the Paralympic flag, the Paralympic anthem, but you will not see that added to the medal table anywhere. Because the NPA is not, and the two neutral teams, they are not participating as teams. They are as a new group of neutral athletes. So you not see them in the medal table.
選手にはメダルは授与されるということでいいですね。
Yes, athletes will receive the medals. When we say that it's not going to be in the medal table, they will not acting as a team. So you not see that in the medal table. But yes, the medal will be handled to the athlete.
Thank you very much.
Well,
And just on a technicality, the RPC will be NPA, Neutral Paralympic Athletes, and NPC Belarus will be known as PNA, Paralympic Neutral Athletes. So we need to do the 3-letter coding in order for the result system, but neither of those delegations or those codes will appear on the medals table. Do we have any further questions? We have a question from the back there, and then we'll come over here.
Thank you very much. Hiroki Tora from Asahi Shimbun. Thank you for taking my question. Question for the President and the Chair of Athlete Council. I know there's not much time to the opening ceremony, but will there be an opportunity for you to explain directly to the athletes before the game starts?
the athletes of all nations, you mean?
Yes.
Before coming here, we spoke with the NPC, the President and Secretary Generals of the National Paralympic Committees present here. Tomorrow morning, we will be at the Chef de Mission meeting to speak with the Chef de Mission. We will not have the opportunity to put all the athletes together to explain to them. We are doing this through the National Paralympic Committees. We are doing that through the Chef de Mission, so the leader of the respective teams here in Beijing. Of course, the athletes normally reach out to the Athletes Council, but any athlete that wants to sit and talk and understand better, we are open to that. Again, we are very democratic, very transparent. That's why we're here tonight to explain. But that is no opportunity, and they are in 3 different villages, to have all the athletes gathered to explain that to them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A question over here to the left-hand side.
Hi, I'm Taku from NHK. Thank you for the opportunity to have questions. And ちょっと日本語で質問させていただきます。今回その開会式が間もなく開かれますけれども、今回そのロシアとベラルーシからの選手は、ニュートラルアスリートということですけれども、どのような形で開会式に参加するのでしょうか。あと今回その参加国は48となっていますけれども、これは2カ国減って46プラスニュートラルアスリートということでよろしいでしょうか。その点を確認させてください。
In the opening ceremony, they will be as neutrals, so no flag from RPC and no flag from National Paralympic Committee of Belarus. I didn't really understand your question on the numbers, but I think from what I understood your question, yes, we will have 46 National Paralympic Committees on the medal table. The 2 NPA is just a way of grouping them, because you have to attribute a code, a national code, a code of 3 letters to every single athlete. But their results will not be grouped. You will not see in the medal table NPA X number of gold medals, gold, silver, and bronze. You will not see that. Their team does not exist here. Their team does not exist here. But we do believe that individual athletes who have earned their qualification to these games, they have the right to compete here.
Question from the middle here.
Hi, David Waldstein, New York Times. I'm just wondering, all these other organizations that have banned the Russian athletes, FIFA, UEFA, Formula One, et cetera, they've made what has separated you, do you think, from all those other organizations? Is it just the principle of your rules? I mean, do they not have those similar rules?
Every organization has its own constitution, its own rules. And of course, we are based in Germany, so we are governed by German law. Some of these organizations you mentioned, they are based, in different nations, so they are governed by different laws.
Do you know, I'm just curious if you know offhand, if they have similar things and they just decided, you know what, we're going to ban them anyway?
No, I don't have the information in what they have based of the suspensions, or let's say the legal basis for them to do that. Because at the end of the day, they have their own constitution, their own rules and regulation, different from ours or not. But we do believe that we are following our own rules, our own regulations, and the rules and the law of the country we are based on.
Could I just ask the 3 board members if, when you have the meeting to determine how you should go forward in the future, whether you will vote that a breach of the truce is something that would warrant being kicked out of the games in the future?
We do not vote. As board members, we do not vote. But if you ask me if I had a vote, yes, I would.
Do Do we have any further questions? Okay, we go just here, and then Wakako, we come to you, and then we close for the
Hello,
evening.
I'm journalist from Latvia, by Barunze. I wanted to ask if other athletes from other countries are allowed to show their support for Ukrainian people in somehow in flags or symbolic, or will there be some consequences against them for showing support?
You want to answer?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So we have rules which have been produced following 18 months of consultation with the IPC Athletes Council. Those rules are very transparent. They're available on the IPC website under the Beijing 2022 homepage. The views from our Athletes Council and also from the athlete community when we did this consultation process before Tokyo was that the field of play, the podium, and the ceremonies should be protected from any form of what could be classed as a protest or sharing the views which are slightly outside of, that would be waving flags and such like. However, if athletes want to share their views in the media and via social media and show their support there, that's all well within the rules of what we have here.
Yeah, but this is not ordinary situation, and you said it that people should be united. And
I get that, but what we've also said today is that we've made a decision that's based on our rules. And here we've got to stick to the rules again. What we can't do in this situation is just say, look, we abandon our core principles that have got our movement to where we are. The rules are there. We need to keep them in place. But what we're saying is that athletes can share their views by all means in media mix zones, press conferences, social media. But the athlete community told us during an 18-month consultation, please protect the field of play, please protect the podium, and please protect the ceremonies from any form of protest. So we've got to listen to the athletes there. And when we did the consultation with the athletes, we gave them a whole range of scenarios which included a war. And the view was, protect those areas. So again, we've got to listen to the athletes here, and we've got to enforce the rules that we spent 18 months consulting with the athlete community on. Thank you. Okay, we've got Wakako, and then you, sir, will be the last question.
Sorry, two technical follow-ups, please, to President. You said there's no team. Will Russians be allowed to, Russian-based individual athlete will be allowed to participate in ice hockey as a team? And if so, what could be their team name?
Well, as Craig has mentioned, the neutral Paralympic athletes and the Paralympic neutral athletes.
As a team?
They will compete in team sports. They will compete, as a team.
And also, you talk about future extraordinary assembly, general assembly, and my understanding, of course, is that even if you would decide at the time to create some kind of clause to make it mandatory for any membership to follow the Olympic truth in the future, that cannot be applicable to what happened here. So in a way, you cannot use that ground to ban Russia or Belarusian NPCs in a legal term. Am I correct to understand so?
Yes, we cannot retroact. We cannot approve, and this needs to be approved by our General Assembly. We cannot approve a new rule and retroactively apply them to suspend or terminate membership of any member.
I see. And if governing board cannot punish Russian or Belarusian NPC, although it seems that Constitution does have some clout for governing board to suspend their membership, do you think that when it comes to General Assembly and you discuss about the suspension of Russian or Belarusian NPC at that time, do you have, or your General Assembly membership have any ground to decide upon it?
The General Assembly has the right to suspend or terminate membership in a different way compared to what the board can do. We can only make that decision to suspend. We cannot terminate membership, but we can suspend if there is a breach of the membership obligations. And that was, again, the breach of the Olympic truce is not a membership, it's not against a membership obligation. So we as the board, we cannot suspend any of these NPCs now. That's what we want to change in the future, but we cannot make that change to our own constitution. Only the General Assembly can.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Kako. Final question, Evan?
Devin Haru with CBC Sports for President Parsons. Just moments ago, Ukrainian athletes have issued a joint statement saying with bombs raining down on Ukrainian citizens, the decision made by the IPC today is another blow to Ukrainian athletes and citizens. How do you respond to that?
Well, I do understand their feelings and do understand they are coming from a country that is at war. We do understand their emotions. We do understand their reactions. The situation here is that we as a board, we cannot make our decisions based on our emotions and our reactions. We will put this organization at risk. What I will respond to them is that the best way that they can express their pride in being Ukrainians is to do what they do best, which is compete at the highest possible level in the field of play here in Beijing. I think this is the way they can express the strength of the Ukrainian people, is winning as many medals as possible in the field of play here in Beijing. This is what I will tell them. I understand, I sympathize, I can only imagine the pain. I never experienced anything even close to what they have experienced. So I do understand and sympathize with their feelings. But we do have a responsibility here. And what I would like to tell them and encourage them is that they put all this energy into the field of play and again make Ukraine proud.
Okay, we will bring tonight's press conference to a close. Apologies for the late evening. We look forward to seeing you during the rest of the games. Thank you very much and have a good evening.